At the executive meeting, Ethan's newly hired female assistant threw a whole iced latte in my face in front of everyone. You, a slacker who does nothing all day but hide in the office playing games, dare to question my proposal? I'm announcing you're fired, get out. I calmly stood up, wiped the stain from my face, and looked at Ethan. He frowned, deliberately avoiding my gaze, and chose to remain silent. I smiled and took out my phone. Dad, did you hear that? They told me to get lost. I was engrossed in a game when my office door suddenly knocked. Manager, assistant has notified all management to be in the main conference room in 10 minutes for a meeting. Mike from the administrative department stood at the doorway, his voice hurried. I didn't lift my head, my fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. Not going. Too busy. In the half year since I joined the company, I had never attended any meetings. It wasn't that I didn't have to go, I just didn't want to. But Mike's voice became hesitant. Assistant specifically emphasized that no one can be absent today. She said it was Mr. Ethan's directive. My fingers paused, and my game character was instantly killed by the boss. The moment the screen went gray, I muttered a curse to myself and closed my laptop. When I arrived at the conference room, it was already packed. Many people gave me strange looks when they saw me, whispering amongst themselves. Why is manager here? Doesn't she never attend meetings? Who knows? Assistant probably specifically requested it. Assistant has been picking on her, so I guess there'll be some drama today. I couldn't be bothered with the gossip, so I took the furthest corner seat and pulled out my phone to continue the game. A full half an hour later, Ethan and Scarlett finally arrived. Scarlett carried a stack of files in her hands, her face beaming triumphantly. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this meeting. Ethan scanned the room, his gaze resting on me for less than a second before moving on. Today, assistant has an important proposal to announce to everyone. Scarlett cleared her throat and began rattling on endlessly about her revolutionary marketing proposal. I played on my phone, half listening, and the more I heard, the more absurd it seemed. This proposal not only had a terrifyingly high budget but also completely failed to align with our company's market positioning. So I believe we should immediately invest 80 million and seize the high-end market within 3 months. Scarlett concluded passionately. Scattered applause broke out in the conference room. I couldn't hold back any longer and said without looking up, 80 million for a bunch of useless exposure? You might as well throw that money from the company rooftop. It would generate more buzz and attract more attention. The conference room instantly fell silent. Ethan's brows furrowed slightly. What did you say? Scarlett's voice sharply rose. I finally looked up and slowly said, your proposal is full of holes. First, the target customer group is incorrectly defined. Second, the distribution channels are inappropriately chosen. Finally, the ROI calculation method is fundamentally flawed. The 20 million you're spending is no different from thrown money down the drain. No, actually, with thrown money down the drain, you at least hear a splash. Scarlett's face immediately flushed crimson. She abruptly grabbed the iced latte from the table and rushed towards me in a few quick steps. You, a slacker who does nothing all day but hide in the office playing games, dare to question my proposal? She practically roared, and then, splash, the entire iced latte was thrown in my face. Liquid ran down my cheeks, staining my white dress brown in an instant. The conference room was absolutely silent, everyone held their breath. Autumn, as the president's assistant, I announce that you are fired. Get out. Scarlett looked down at me. I slowly stood up, pulled a handkerchief from my pocket, and meticulously wiped the stains from my face. Then I looked at Ethan. He frowned, then avoided my gaze and chose to remain silent. I suddenly smiled. Speaking into my phone, which was on speaker, I said, Dad, did you hear that? They told me to get lost. There was silence on the other end of the line for 2 seconds, then a low, powerful voice spoke. Understood. I'll make arrangements. The only reason I came to work here was because of the arranged engagement my grandfather made years ago. Ethan was my fiancé. I wasn't keen on an arranged marriage, but my dad kept badgering me, even pulling out the guilt trip of filial duty to pressure me. I had no choice but to agree. To deepen our family's bond, my dad had me join the Vance. In the half year working for my fiancé, even though I played games every day and seemed like a slacker, I had secretly been using various resources to make the company's performance saw significant growth, even going public. The group became a leading enterprise, and Ethan also made it onto the Crestwood list of billionaires. Although I had helped significantly, we rarely communicated in our daily lives. In our few dates, I learned that he only knew I was his arranged engagement, not my true background. I sat back down in the corner chair, pulled out my phone, and resumed the game that had been interrupted. On the screen, my character revived, and my fingers moved swiftly, as if the tense atmosphere in the conference room had nothing to do with me. Scarlett's face changed from red to pale, clearly not expecting me to so blatantly disregard her authority. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice sharp. Autumn. What do you think this place is? Everyone else is focused on the meeting, and you're just playing games? I scoffed. I've already met my annual performance targets. What's wrong with playing a game? If you don't get out now, I'll call security. I replied without looking up. Suit yourself. The other executives exchanged glances. Some looked down, pretending to flip through files, while others secretly peeked at Ethan, waiting for his reaction. Ethan finally stood up. He was wearing a sharp, black suit today, his expression grim. He looked at me, a hint of impatience and indifference in his eyes. Autumn, your performance is indeed good. His voice was calm, yet it carried an undeniable authority. But this is the company, not your home. Please leave the conference room immediately. Don't disrupt the meeting. My fingers paused, and my game character died again. I looked up, met his gaze, and a playful smile tugged at my lips. Mr. Ethan, are you sure you want to kick me out? Ethan frowned, his tone even colder. I won't repeat myself. If you have any professional etiquette, you should know your place. What if I don't want to leave? Then don't blame me for being ruthless. Seeing on her side, Scarlett's boldness instantly grew. She rushed over to me in a few strides and slapped the phone from my hand. Crack, the phone crashed to the floor, its screen instantly cracking into a spiderweb pattern. Autumn, don't push your luck. She grabbed my collar and yanked it upwards forcefully. Mr. Ethan has already spoken. What are you still doing here? Get out. From the first day she became an assistant, Scarlett had disliked me. Once, as I passed the president's office, I heard her loudly proclaiming, Mr. Ethan, the company isn't a charity. Spending so much money on a slacker who plays games all day is incredibly unfair to other employees. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was just audible from outside. Ethan didn't respond. But through the window, I saw his head-down movement of flipping through documents pause. After that, Scarlett became even worse. She started accidentally bringing up my great achievements, sarcastic, at departmental meetings. Some people, they get high salaries but don't even attend meetings. I wonder if they're here for work or a vacation. Gradually, gossip and rumors began circulating about me in the company. Some said I was a rich girl who got in through connections, others that I slept in my office all day, and some even bet on when I'd be fired. I knew all of this, but I couldn't be bothered to care. But the more indifferent I became, the more she tried to push her luck. This time, seizing the opportunity, her arrogance reached an extreme. I won't tolerate her antics. I seized her wrist and twisted it hard. Ah! Scarlett cried out in pain, instinctively letting go of my collar. The moment she struggled free, her arm hit the edge of the conference table, and her wristwatch made a sharp clinking sound against the solid wood surface. She staggered back 2 steps, looked down, and her face instantly turned deathly pale. The surface of the valuable Patek wristwatch on her wrist already had a clear scratch, particularly glaring under the light. You. She tremblingly raised her wrist, fury almost bursting from her eyes. Autumn, do you know how much this watch costs? This was a birthday gift from Mr. Ethan. It cost $800,000. I calmly straightened my wrinkled collar. If you can't stand steady, whose fault is that? Autumn. Ethan finally couldn't hold back and snapped, you've gone too far. Not only are you disrupting the meeting, but now you're deliberately damaging someone else's property. As I officially inform you, you are fired. Now, pack your things and leave the company immediately. Scarlett shrieked, Mr. Ethan, you can't let her off easy. She must pay for the watch. The conference room was silent. Everyone looked at me with pity or schadenfreude, as if waiting for a show to begin. Fine, I'll pay. 800,000, right? I bent down and picked up the broken phone. Although the screen was cracked, it was still usable. I dialed a number, and just as I was about to speak, Scarl TT sneered, what 800,000? It's 8 million. I paused and looked at her. Are you sure? Of course, I'm sure, Scarlett said arrogantly. A gift from Mr. Ethan is priceless. Only making you pay 8 million is already letting you off easy. Ask everyone here if I'm right. Scarlett stubbornly insisted. She knew my salary and that I couldn't possibly afford that much money. She just wanted to disgust and humiliate me. Seeing this, the other executives began to chime in. That's right, how can a gift from Mr. Ethan be measured in money? Mr. Paul pushed up his glasses. Manager, you should just admit it. The company isn't a charity, paying for damages is only fair, Mr. Mark scoffed. However, with manager's salary, she'll probably be paying it off until retirement, won't she? Everyone burst into laughter, their eyes filled with mockery and schadenfreude. They had long disliked me, the slacker, and now seeing me in trouble, they were naturally happy to kick me while I was down. Ethan stood to the side, his brows slightly furrowed, but he didn't intervene. I wasn't angered by their sarcasm. I looked up at Scarlett, 8 million. It won't increase anymore, will it? Scarlett was startled for a moment, then scoffed. Autumn, at this point, what are you trying to prove? How much is your monthly salary anyway? 8 million, are you going to pay with your life? I ignored her and picked up my phone. Get 8 million in cash ready for me and send it to the Vance conference room. As fast as possible. Scarlett looked disdainful. Don't play dumb. Do you think a random phone call can bluff anyone? I didn't answer, just waited quietly. Less than 10 minutes later, the conference room door opened, and a sharp-suit middle-aged man walked in. Behind him were 3 uniformed bank employees, each carrying a box. He walked straight up to me and bowed respectfully. Ms. Autumn, here is the 8 million you requested. I nodded. Thank you for your trouble. You can put them here. As the 3 boxes were opened one by one, neat stacks of $100 bills gleamed glaringly under the lights. The conference room was silent, everyone's gaze fixed on the banknotes. The air felt sucked out, and even everyone's breathing became faint. Scarlett's face was a sight, but she couldn't utter a single word. She stared intently at the cash, then looked up at the man in the suit. Suddenly, Mr. Paul's face turned pale with fright. Mr. Roberts? Mr. Roberts, president of the Crestwood office. An influential figure whom Grandpa found extremely difficult to even get an audience with, now stood respectfully before me, addressing me as Ms. Autumn. Ethan hesitated for a few seconds, then quickly stepped forward, extending his hand to greet him. Mr. Roberts, why did you come personally? My grandfather always mentions you, he said he'd really like to see you again. Mr. Roberts didn't even spare him a glance, only giving a slight nod. Then he said to me, Ms. Autumn, if you need anything else, just say the word. Having said that, he turned and left the conference room with his people. He was decisive, as if staying an extra second would be a waste of time. Ethan's hand was frozen in mid-air, his face alternating between red and pale. Scarlett's arrogance completely vanished. Her legs turned to jelly, and she could barely stand, fine beads of sweat breaking out on her forehead. I leisurely pulled a stack of bills from the box and gently patted her face. Assistant, 8 million, not a cent less. Now, this watch is mine. With that, I yanked the Patek wristwatch from her wrist and threw it into the trash can right in front of her. You. Scarlett's eyes blazed with fury. I turned to Ethan and smiled faintly. Mr. Ethan, I've paid for the watch. Now, let's talk about the compensation for my phone. Scarlett was momentarily stunned, then a contemptuous smile appeared on her face, as if she'd heard the biggest joke. Coo. She crossed her arms, her tone full of ridicule. How much could a Phoenix phone possibly be worth? I raised one finger. It's certainly not valuable. Only 100 million, that is. The entire room erupted in an uproar, then burst into laughter. Mr. Mark even exaggeratedly slapped the table. 100 million? Manager, you haven't scalded your brain with that iced latte, have you? Mr. Paul pushed up his glasses, feigning seriousness as he added, according to company regulations, damaged items are compensated at market price. Manager, the market price of your phone probably isn't even a fraction of that, is it? Seeing everyone agree, Scarlett became even more smug. She walked up to me and chuckled. How about this? I'll be merciful and help you contact a psychiatric hospital. After all, delusions are a sickness, they need to be treated. Ethan stood aside, his brows tightly furrowed, but he remained silent. Faced with everyone's sarcasm, I remained calm. You're right, an ordinary Phoenix phone really isn't worth much. Scarlett scoffed, good you know that. Don't embarrass yourself here anymore. Unfortunately, this isn't an ordinary Phoenix phone. As soon as I finished speaking, the conference room door opened again. This time, a middle-aged man in a gray jacket walked in, followed by 8 bodyguards. You, senior president of Phoenix Group, who usually only appeared at press conferences. Ethan's expression changed abruptly, and he quickly stepped forward. Mr. Coleman? Why are you here? You ignored Ethan's greeting and walked straight up to me, nodding slightly. Ms. Autumn, we just detected an abnormal signal from your phone. I nodded and handed him my phone. Yeah, I dropped it. You took the phone, examined it carefully, and his expression turned serious. The damage is severe. The cost of repairs and parts replacement alone will likely be $70 million. His voice wasn't loud, but it hit everyone like a sledgehammer. Scarlett's face instantly went white, and her lips trembled. Impossible. What kind of phone costs that much to repair? This is a globally limited edition custom model. Its built-in chip and encryption technology are worth far more than a standard flagship phone. It's currently valued at $100 million on the market, and you can't buy it even with money. You glanced at him coldly and pulled a document from his briefcase. Ms. Autumn, this is the phone's appraisal report and purchase contract. Shall I read it aloud? I waved my hand. No need. I believe everyone here has heard it clearly enough. The conference room was silent. Mr. Paul's glasses slid to the tip of his nose, and he forgot to push them up. Mr. Mark's mouth hung open, like a fish gasping for air. As for Scarlett, she completely collapsed into her chair, cold sweat profusely beading on her forehead. Ethan finally came to his senses. Autumn, who exactly are you? I didn't answer him directly but looked at Scarlett. Assistant, now, shouldn't we discuss compensation? Scarlett suddenly stood up, screaming hysterically, you're all in on this together to extort me. This phone couldn't possibly be worth $100 million. You frowned and signaled to the bodyguards behind him. 2 men immediately stepped forward and held Scarlett by her arms, one on each side. Ms. Scarlett, if you question us, you are welcome to pursue legal action at any time. Yu's voice was devoid of emotion. Phoenix Group's legal team of 3,865 lawyers guarantees we will see this through. Scarlett's face changed from white to pale green, and large beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. Everyone knew how formidable Phoenix's legal team was. Let alone her, a mere assistant, even the entire Vance wouldn't be enough to trouble them. Her voice trembled, Mr. Ethan, help me. Ethan took a deep breath, stepped forward, and stood in front of Scarlett, his tone returning to its usual calm. Mr. Coleman, there might be some misunderstanding about this. I will bear assistance compensation. You didn't respond immediately, instead turning his gaze to me. I nodded slightly in approval, and only then did he put away the document and say to Ethan, since Ethan has spoken, Phoenix will give you 3 days to handle this. With that, he turned and left with his bodyguards. The conference room door closed softly, yet it felt like a dull thunderclap striking everyone's heart. My gaze swept over Ethan and Scarlett, a slight curve to my lips. A seemingly unprovoked $100 million expenditure, Mr. Ethan, don't you need board approval for that? Before could speak, Scarlett suddenly peered out from behind him, the fear on her face replaced by twisted triumph. Autumn, have you forgotten? You've been fired. None of your business what happens with the company. Her words were like a fuse, reigniting the tension in the conference room. The other executives exchanged glances. Someone whispered, that's right, manager isn't with the company anymore. What right does she have to point fingers and dictate to Mr. Ethan? Exactly. Ethan's brows furrowed even deeper. He raised a hand to silence everyone, then looked at me. Autumn, since you are no longer an employee of Vance, this matter ends here. The $100 million compensation will be transferred to your account within 3 days. Now, please leave. I stood still, the smile on my lips deepening. Mr. Ethan is truly generous, casually spending $100 million for a mere assistant. However, putting the board aside for a moment, are you sure your dad will agree? Will your grandfather agree? Scarlett's expression shifted again. She tugged at Ethan's sleeve and whispered, Mr. Ethan, don't listen to her nonsense. I smiled. I'm not talking nonsense. How about I call him for you and ask? As I started dialing, Scarlett panicked. She snatched my phone and smashed it to pieces with her foot. She even arrogantly declared since I'd agreed to compensation, the phone was hers and I couldn't tell her what to do with it. Ethan also warned me coldly, Autumn, I don't care what your relationship is with Mr. Roberts and Mr. Coleman, but this is Vance, and I call the shots. Now, please leave this place. I calmly sat in the chair, my fingers lightly tapping on the table, my gaze calmly sweeping over Scarlett's face, distorted by rage. I can leave, I slowly began. Provided that Grandpa personally comes to invite me. Scarlett froze for a moment, then burst into a piercing laugh, as if she'd heard the biggest joke. She pointed at me, laughing uncontrollably. Ha ha ha. Who do you think you are? You think you're worthy of Grandpa personally inviting you? Autumn, are you insane? Ethan's face completely chilled. He took a step forward, his voice carrying an undeniable authority. Autumn, I'm warning you one last time, this is Vance, not a place for you to act wildly. Now, leave immediately. The executives in the conference room echoed his words, some even picking up their phones to call security. I remained seated, unmoving, merely raising an eyebrow and looking past Ethan to the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. Outside the window, a black stretch limousine slowly pulled up to the building entrance. The door opened, and a white-haired old man stepped out, leaning on a cane. He was being assisted by a stern-looking middle-aged man. I chuckled softly. Looks like I won't need to make that call. Ethan followed my gaze, and his face instantly changed. Dad, Grandpa? Scarlett's laughter abruptly stopped when she saw Grandpa approaching the conference room. Her legs turned to jelly, and she almost collapsed to her knees. The conference room door was pushed open, and Grandpa walked in with stumbling steps, leaning on his cane. He was hurried, almost frantic. His gaze swept across the mess in the conference room, finally landing on me. Ms. Autumn, I apologize. I'm late. That Ms. Aut. Plunged the entire conference room into silence once more. Ethan looked at me in disbelief. Then he looked at Grandpa. Grandpa, you. What did you call her? Grandpa didn't answer him. Instead, he walked up to me, bowing slightly. Ms. Autumn, the Vance family failed to properly discipline its members, and you have been wronged. Scarlett's face was utterly pale. She trembled and stumbled back 2 steps, her voice almost squeezed out between her teeth. Grandpa, have you mistaken her for someone else? She's just a slacker. Silence. Grandpa suddenly turned, his cane striking the ground heavily, his voice booming like thunder. Scarlett, who do you think you are, daring to disrespect Ms. Autumn? Scarlett was so terrified by the reprimand that she collapsed onto the floor, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Grandpa took a deep breath, turned to Ethan, his eyes filled with disappointment. Ethan, do you know who she is? I didn't tell you the truth initially because I was afraid you'd have a psychological burden. So I planned to tell you after the engagement. But you actually. Sigh. Ethan's fingertips trembled slightly. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I stood up, straightened my dress stained by the iced latte, and spoke softly, Grandpa, you don't need to trouble him. Since group doesn't welcome me, then I'll leave. With that, I took a step towards the door. Wait. Mr. Daniel hurriedly stopped me, his tone almost pleading. Autumn, this is the Vance family's mistake. Please give us a chance to make amends. I stopped and glanced back at Ethan. His face was pale, his eyes filled with shock and bewilderment. A chance? I chuckled softly. Mr. Daniel, do you think the Vance, as it is now, has the right to talk about chances with me? As soon as I finished speaking, the projector screen in the conference room suddenly lit up, displaying a real-time financial news headline, breaking news. Vance stock 30%, market value evaporates by nearly billion. The executives erupted in an uproar, some even directly collapsed into their chairs. Ethan suddenly looked up at the screen, his pupils contracting. I leisurely took out another phone and dialed a number. You can stop now. A minute later, the stock price curve on the screen suddenly stopped falling, then slowly began to recover. The conference room was silent, everyone's gaze fixed on me, as if they were looking at a monster. Mr. Daniel took a deep breath, then suddenly turned and slapped Scarlett across the face. You disgraceful thing. Get on your knees. Apologize to Ms. Autumn. Scarlett's mouth bled from the slap. She spun around twice, her lip bleeding and a tooth chipped. Seeing her pitiful state, Ethan was deeply distressed and quickly stepped forward to help her. Dad, let's talk this through calmly. Why are you hitting her? I watched dispassionately. Ethan's usually handsome face was now flushed red with anger. The way he protected Scarlett reminded me of how many times he had rejected my invitations for that woman during this period. Mr. Daniel, it's fine. I calmly adjusted my cuffs. Since Ethan is determined to protect her, an apology isn't necessary. Mr. Daniel's face was ashen. He slapped her again. This time, Scarlett immediately fell to her knees, the sound of her knees hitting the floor making everyone present wince. Ethan, get out of my way. Mr. Daniel roared. Do you know who you're protecting? Do you know who you've offended? Ethan stood his ground stubbornly, his slender arms spread out like a mother hen protecting her chicks. No matter who she is, she shouldn't be bullied like this. He turned and glared at me, his eyes burning with furious flames. Autumn, using your background to humiliate people like this is shameful and despicable. The conference room was silent. On the projector screen, the Vance's stock price curve was still fluctuating slightly, reminding everyone of what had just happened. Edition. I walked up to Ethan. The faint scent of men's cologne from him wafted into my nostrils. It was the one Scarlett had given him, I remembered. 3 months ago, on his birthday, I gave him a watch worth 10 million. He politely thanked me but never wore it again. Yet he wore the cheap cologne Scarlett had given him every day. Ethan, I said calmly. In the past 3 months, I've asked you out 14 times, and you've refused 14 times. Each time, the excuse was that you were too busy with work. My gaze swept to Scarlett. Only later did I find out that every time you refused me, you were with her. Ethan's eyelashes fluttered for a moment, but he quickly lifted his chin. So what? It's my freedom who I associate with. We only have an arranged engagement, we aren't actually married. Of course. I nodded. I just wanted to ask, do you know why every proposal you've put forward has gone through smoothly? Do you know why competitors always inexplicably withdraw from bids? Do you know why the bank suddenly approved loans for which you didn't even qualify? Ethan's face changed. You. What do you mean? Grandpa sighed heavily and walked to my side, leaning on his cane. Ethan, in the past 6 months, Vance's ability to successfully go public and its stock price triple was all due to Ms. Autumn's operations behind the scenes. Impossible. Ethan's voice grew sharp. Those were the results of our team's hard work. I took out my phone and projected a document onto the screen. Mr. Ethan, over the past 6 months, I leveraged 17 of the Lin family's business connections to clear all obstacles for Vance. Names and astonishing figures scrolled across the screen, including persuading the Weijing to withdraw from the bid for the South City plot, allowing Vance to acquire that prime land at the lowest price. Scarlett suddenly scrambled up from the floor, screaming hysterically, liar. These are all faked. Mr. Ethan, don't believe her. Mr. Daniel kicked her in the back of the knee, and Scarlett collapsed to the ground again. Shut up. You terrible person. I watched the scene, my heart unruffled. I picked up my jacket and draped it over my arm. Grandpa, Mr. Daniel, since you're here, I should be going. As for the engagement between our two families, let's end it here. Ms. Autumn. Grandpa hurriedly stopped me. This matter is the Vance family's fault, but the engagement. Grandpa. Ethan suddenly interrupted him, tears in his eyes but his head stubbornly held high. Let her go. I don't need a fiancé who relies on her family background to oppress others. I quietly looked at Ethan, the man with whom I had an arranged engagement since childhood. Very well. I nodded and took out a jade bracelet from my pocket, placing it on the table. This was the engagement token my grandfather exchanged back then. I'm returning it to you now. Mr. Daniel's face was ashen. Grandpa closed his eyes, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. As I turned to walk towards the door, I paused, without looking back. Oh, and starting tomorrow, the Lin will completely withdraw from all collaborations with Vance, including the 5 ongoing projects and the financing agreement that was about to be signed. Ethan gasped. You can't do this. Those projects are crucial to Vance's 10-year plan and the livelihoods of thousands of employees. I looked back and gave him one last smile. I can. Just as you could refuse me 14 times for a female assistant. The moment I pushed open the conference room door, I heard Grandpa's desperate cry. Ms. Autumn, please give the Vance family another chance. I didn't stop. Over the next month, the Vance's situation rapidly deteriorated. Several major plans were forced to a halt due to broken capital chains, partners withdrew their investments one after another, and the stock price fell to an all-time low. Scarlett was personally fired by Grandpa the day after the incident in Scram. Bled out of Crestwood. I heard she was eventually sold to a dangerous border region known for illicit activities, living a life worse than death. That day, I was sitting in a revolving restaurant on the top floor of Metropolis, across from Julian, my childhood friend, who had just returned from Cambridge. He poked at the dessert on his plate with his fork while teasing me. Young Autumn, I heard you used a lot of your family's resources for a man, only for all efforts in vain in the end? I sipped my red wine and lazily replied, it was an engagement set by my grandfather, I had to show some respect. Julian smiled, his eyes curving into attractive crescents. Since the engagement is off, why don't you consider me? At least we're well matched in terms of family background and know each other inside out. Just as I was about to reply, my peripheral vision caught a familiar figure at the restaurant entrance. Ethan. He was wearing the watch I had given him, his face pale, looking completely different from his usual polished and assertive self. The waiter stopped him and said something. He shook his head, his gaze fixed on me, and walked straight over. Autumn, can I speak with you alone? Julian raised an eyebrow and looked at me. I didn't speak. Ethan's eyelashes trembled, and he suddenly bowed. Autumn, I'm here to beg you to come back to Vance. Now, only you can save the company. I remained silent. Julian put down his fork and chuckled softly. Mr. Ethan, do you regret it now? When you allowed your assistant to publicly humiliate Autumn, did you ever consider this day would come? Ethan bit his lip. Autumn, I was wrong. His eyes were red-rimmed when he looked up. If you don't come back, thousands of employees could lose their jobs. Once the South City development project halts, the contractors and workers. What does that have to do with me? I interrupted him. I'm no longer part of Goose Group. Besides, you're the one who personally fired you. July. Ian suddenly stood up, his leather shoes making a sharp click on the marble floor. He was half a head taller than Ethan, and his presence was imposing. Ethan, do you have any idea how many resources Autumn used from the Lynn family to help you? She even arranged an entire emergency team near your company just to cover your back at any time. He snatched my phone, pulled out an encrypted folder, and slapped it onto the table. Look. These are all the contingency plans she prepared for you. And all you saw was her playing games in the office all day. You even trampled on her for that floozy. The dense files on the screen stung Ethan's eyes. He stumbled back a step, his voice trembling. I didn't know. Now you know? Julian sneered. She's an exceptional woman. You treated her like dirt, but others will obviously cherish her as a treasure. With that, he took my hand. Let's go, Uncle is waiting for us to try on wedding dresses. Ethan looked up sharply. Wedding dresses? I didn't correct him, letting Julian pull me to my feet. Without looking back, I added, oh, by the way, Weijing will officially take over the South City project tomorrow. After all, they originally agreed to withdraw out of respect for me. As I left the revolving restaurant, I saw Ethan still standing there through the glass facade. His lone figure was stretched long by the setting sun. Julian lightly squeezed my arm. Going soft? I smiled. Of course not. Goose Group eventually went bankrupt. The day the news broke, Crestwood's business community was in an uproar. The once leading enterprise, once so magnificent, was now just an empty office building and a pile of pending debt documents. Grandpa's hair turned white overnight, and Mr. Daniel desperately sought help, but no one dared to offer a hand. Everyone knew that offending the Lynn family in Metropolis meant cutting off one's own retreat. And I, under the name of Lynn's Group, acquired all of Goo's assets at an extremely low price. The day after the acquisition was completed, I stood in front of Goo's Group headquarters, with the Lynn family's elite team behind me. The moment I pushed open the glass door, the familiar receptionist stood up in a panic. Her lips trembled as she called out, Ms. Autumn. I didn't respond, walking straight to the elevator. In the top floor conference room, Goo's executives had already been notified and were trembling with fear, waiting. As I pushed the door open, all eyes turned to me in unison. There was fear, regret, and most of all, anticipation. Everyone, thanks for waiting. I pulled out the head chair and sat down, my voice calm. Starting today, Goo's Group is officially merged into Lynn's Group, and as for all of you, I scanned each face and firmly stated, you are all fired. The conference room instantly erupted. Mr. Paul, suddenly stood up, his face turning ashen. Ms. Autumn, we've worked at Goose for over a decade, Even if we haven't achieved great things, we've certainly put in the effort. You can't just. Can't? I scoffed, throwing a stack of files onto the table. These are all your financial irregularities and illicit activities from the past 3 years. If you don't want to go to jail, sign and leave now. Their faces turned deathly pale, and no one dared to speak again. As I walked out of the conference room, I saw Ethan at the end of the hallway. He had lost a lot of weight, his eyes sunken, holding a cardboard box filled with his personal belongings. Autumn, are you satisfied now? His voice was hoarse, but his gaze was stubborn. I stopped. Business is like warfare, success depends on one's own ability. He bit his lip, then suddenly asked, if I hadn't treated you that way back then, would the outcome have been different? I glanced at him but didn't answer. Then turned and left. Behind me, I heard his suppressed sobs. I didn't look back. Some mistakes, once made, can never be undone.